Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and earlier I had the chance to talk to a very interesting gentleman. His name is Peter Strople. He's also known as the most connected man in the United States and the most connected man in the world. But his personal story says it all. Join me as we talk to Peter Strople. Well, today we have the honor of talking to somebody that perhaps you have heard of. His name is Peter Strople. He's been called one of the world's great rainmakers, the most connected man in America, and one of the most connected people in the world. He's the former director of Dell Computer Corporation and the Grid System Corporation. That's the company that invented the modern kind of like clamshell style laptop that we all use. In 2008, he created Friends of Peter to bring business and community leaders together to affect his philosophy called Instant Change, where he helps businesses do the change not in a matter of months, but literally in the matter of hours. Fascinating gentleman, and I think his heart passion is dealing with children's issues, combating child abuse, supporting foster care, reforming education. In fact, he and his wife Kelly, from 2003 to 2007, housed 16 people in their home with the goal of helping those families get out of debt, establish a new foundation for the future. So what an honor it is to have with us today Peter Strople. How you doing, my friend?
Good. Thanks, Perry. I appreciate it.
Ah, wonderful. Listen, your own life story is fascinating. Going from being put up to adoption to the corporate top of the world. Give us a little synopsis of your life story.
Wow. Yeah. We were born. Our mother was a single mom, and she tried to keep us in the first year of our life. And we were told that she actually put us up to adoption, and then she actually went and got us back. And then she had to put us up the second time. So it was about 3 years later is when my father, Doug Strople, actually adopted us. And within 3 years of our adoption, his wife died of cancer. So my dad didn't, necessarily want young kids. He was an executive, but he was kind of stuck with us. And the next couple of years, up to the time we were about 8 years old, we were just being bounced around from home to home. Anybody that could look after us, because I was told he had a nervous breakdown at that time, and he ended up remarrying a woman that was much older than him, but wasn't a very nice person. And we had kind of, you can imagine waking up every day and kind of terrified and not knowing how you're going to be treated. And there was certainly no love in the home. And my twin sister ended up leaving home at 14. And about a month later, I followed her out. And I was lucky. At the time, I was playing hockey, and the hockey team actually put me up in a home. But my sister had to go from, house to house and, I think spend time on the streets. But I was always fascinated by the fact that we kind of started out in life together, but we've gone very different paths. My sister lives in a mobile home today. Her front teeth are, knocked out of her face. And it's just a horrible, horrible life. And we're actually trying to get her to move down here to Texas so we can get her teeth replaced, so we can get her to smile again. But I never thought I'd ever be anybody. And I was fascinated because I talked to my friends and say, there's something that happened in the first year of our life that must have been amazing love. Because I knew what love was, even if I didn't really understand it. I knew what it was. I had experienced it before, and I think that's what helped me get through a lot of things in my life. I was very lucky. I had coaches in soccer, coaches in hockey that really made a big difference in my life. And when somebody believes in you, it makes a big difference. I don't think my sister had that same opportunity. Actually, I know that. People, especially men, try to take advantage of her. And that's really what her life's been about. But, I wanted to be a hockey player. That was my goal. And a friend asked me if I'd be interested in, during the summer, when I was young, to be part of a summer job with IBM Corporation. And when they first put my picture in the newspaper, we got a call from a chairman of an oil company who said he wanted me to come down and see him. And I never understood how significant that was, because in hockey, everybody and their dog wants to meet you. Everybody wants tickets. Everybody wants somebody's autograph. But what happened in that moment is I saw the company kind of freak out, because they said, you're telling me this CEO called you. And I said, yes, he did. And he wants to meet with you tomorrow. Yeah. And you actually say he called you. And I was just, again, I kind of started to see how that's not normal. And what happened is the next day, they actually, I lived in Calgary at the time. They actually brought an executive out from Toronto, literally on a red-eye flight overnight, to be at the meeting with me. And when we got to the, this top, floor of this company, and walked into their big, boardroom. I've never seen a table as big as this one. And we're sitting, two guys sitting at the very end. But as we walk down, I'm thinking, I don't even know what IBM stands for, As we're walking up to the end of this guy stands up and he says, "Hey, Peter," and shakes my hand. And he says to a gentleman beside him, he says to the other gentleman, he says, "You guys need to go talk technical. I want to talk to Peter alone." Whoa. And immediately I started, apologizing. I don't even know anything about this. I don't really know much about the company. And he said, "No, I don't want to talk about business. I want to talk about hockey." And then we sat down, and he told me, he mentioned his son's name. His son was a 14-year-old goaltender at the time. And at the time I was scouting for the New Jersey Devils. And he said to me, he said, "Do you know my son?" I said, "I do know your son." He said, "Would you think your son, do you think my son could get a scholarship to a U.S. university?" And I said, "I think absolutely he could do that." And he said, "Would you be a reference for him?" And I actually took out my New Jersey letterhead and actually wrote on it a reference for him and handed. And that day we kind of authorized us to be anything we wanted to be. And I realized at that moment, I mean, most people just want to, there's all these kind of can't buy moments in life that you can create. I really kind of, if you look at my life, it's really about that. It's I want people to meet people they dream about. I want people to have experiences and treated in a way they would never thought they'd be, created or treated. Yeah. And I want people to be kind of just be who they are.
That is absolutely fascinating. So out of that came your internship with IBM?
Yeah. So what happens? I spent 2 years with them, and in a sales role, and eventually they actually asked me to look after one of their largest accounts in Canada, and within about 3 months of that, we lost the business. And I'll never forget, our president flew in and was sitting with me, and what happened? And I said, "Well, we had this meeting, and this is what they said. And what did you say?" And well, I said this. And what did they say? They said this. And then he stopped me and he said, "Peter," he said, "how long have you been with us?" And I said, "Well, about 2 years." And he said, "You know everything the way that the book tells you to say it, but you don't believe it." And I'll never forget that. And then he said, "If the only thing you know is that we're a big company, that's all you say. Everything else is fake. If you can't understand that." And it changed my view on everything in regards to because again, you always want to be the best. And one of the things that fascinated me about business is whenever I'd ask somebody who they are, the first thing people would tell me is, "Well, I got a PhD from Harvard," and and I remember thinking, why is that the first thing people talk about? Because I was lucky to get out of high school,
Wow.
And I was sitting there thinking, but they're using that as kind of a judgment of who I am. And I realized that I'm the dumbest guy in the room. And I always used to say that. I'm the dumbest guy here. I don't even know what you're talking about, and the big words. And it was amazing how many times when I asked people, "What did you say? Can you just describe it to me?" And I asked people to describe it like I was a baby. I mean, literally, I don't understand what you're talking about. And what happens, I had people come up to me afterwards and say, "Peter, oh my God, I'm so glad you asked that," because I didn't know what the guy was talking about either. And I remember thinking, this is so funny. These guys are executives, and they don't have the gall to be able to say, "Look at this. I don't understand what you're saying."
Wow.
But I've never kind of lost that ability to ask the stupid questions, I guess.
What's so fascinating about this, obviously, you were given a break, and out of that came a passion for you to connect people. Tell me about that.
Well, again, it was just when I was sitting in meetings, because there was somebody significant in that company or in my clients who said something, who I had to create a relationship with, and there's something about me with them that they said, they saw me as something special. And I think the one thing they said is that, I never tried to be anybody. And, because everybody, there's friends of mine are billionaires out of Dallas. And I'll never forget, a few years ago, I asked them, I said, so what's your perception of me? And they said, Peter, what we tell people is that he never claims to be anybody, yet he can pick up the phone and call anybody, and they said that he can call people that we wish we could call.
Wow.
And he said, everybody that they meet tries to be bigger than they are. So they always have to do a lot of background, because people aren't going to be real about who they really are. And that was just fascinating me. And so again, because I don't know much when we're talking about a subject matter, I don't care what it is, or we're saying, what are we going to do? Do you know anybody at because our dream customer is Walmart, as an example. If I know the former CEO, or if I can get to the CEO, why wouldn't I do that in that moment? And in that, just literally as we're thinking, we can actually add them to the conversation in regards to what their perception is and what we're talking about. And is it relevant to their company? If it is, who's the right people for us to be talking to? So that's what.
I'm going to take a break here in just a second, but you had another life-changing experience, and it was just recently, 2003, you had a heart attack, and that really changed you. Can you give me a quick response to that?
Well, it's actually my second heart attack, and my first was in 2003, where I was effectively gone. And that really changed who I am, and we can talk about that. But then 9 months ago, I had another massive heart attack, and I have to get my heart replaced here in the next 2 years. But I also had a stroke. So what you're getting me is, 9 months after my stroke, and some of my words that I miss because of that. My brain's kind of a little bit over time, but. Yeah, absolutely. If I have to say this, if I had a chance to have it or not have it, in both situations, I would hit the button to have it, because I've learned so much about life. And
I want you to share that. We're going to be right back with Peter Strople right after this.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back, and we're talking to a man who's been given several titles: the most connected man in America, one of the most connected people in the world. Peter Stroble's with us, and he's had a couple of life-changing experiences in his life just recently, with a heart attack and a stroke. And Peter, as we went into the break, we were talking about how this has changed you, and yet, if you could choose not to have them, you would choose to have them. Why?
Primarily because of how it changed my life. And I used to always say to my friends that the statement that needs are finite, wants are infinite, and time is finite, money is infinite. And I realized that when you don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow, which is what happened the first time in 2003. I wasn't aware that every day I was wondering if today's the day I'm going to die. It really starts to change who you're sitting with and what you're talking about and what you're spending your time on. And I started to become much more fearless in regards to, why are we talking? This is what we're talking about isn't even relevant. We're not going to make any difference today. And the other thing is, it forced me to be the best I could be, because if I'm only got an hour with somebody, I don't want to have any to-dos, because I'll never be able to. I just didn't know if I'd ever be able to get back to them and honor what I said I would do. So I had to figure out a way to do it now. And that's one of the reasons why I started picking up the phone and calling people. I said, listen, I'm going to make the conversation happen right this moment, because we need it. But I also want you to know this person, and I want him to know you're a friend of mine, just in case. And I actually started to change it a little bit too. Say, if I can't make that call, here's the thing, here's the number, but you call him and say, by the way, Peter says he loves you. That was really important for me to make sure that my friends knew that I cared about them. And it's become kind of a amazing journey I have a lot of friends of mine say they pulled a Peter Strople today because they picked up the phone and called somebody. And I'm going, yay, that's about time, But it really changes something when you're kind of, I would say everybody needs an agent. And I don't know why people stand up and start telling the world about who they are and, trying to act like there's something. And I realized that, I want to be the agent. I'll be the one telling my friends who they are to my friends. And I'll say things that are bigger, and they'll say, Peter always, makes me much bigger than we really are. And I said, you know what? That's who you are to me. It's okay. But,
wow.
You're amazing. So,
a couple things came out of this. A philosophy you've created called instant change. Now, I would assume that that's even been magnified since your health issues, because you want to do it now. You want to impact lives at this very moment. Is that what that's about?
Well, it is, and it actually started with a child. After my first heart attack, my wife wanted to help start a foster care agency with a friend of hers. Huh. And at the time, I didn't believe it was relevant because you can imagine in Dallas there was 20,000 kids had been abused in the previous year. And when we started to look at what a new foster care agency would look like, I asked who's the biggest one today, and the biggest one only handled 100 kids. Wow. So if you're sitting over 20,000 kids in need and you only can create the biggest one today, even if we got lucky, it would be only 100 kids. I said, we're not even going to make a difference. Well, after my heart attack, all of a sudden, what my wife wanted mattered. And where I didn't think it was make sense before, I said, you know what, we've got to do this. The first child that I met was a child that had been set on fire by his parents. Whoa. And this child was 90% burned. Whoa. And I couldn't believe, first of all, I was thinking his parents. So his whole idea of what love is and who's safe, he didn't have that. And then he was in the system. And the system was actually bouncing around from home to home because he didn't sweat, he bled. And so he started to bleed into mattresses. Wow. Well, then one family put plastic over the mattresses, which actually made them bleed more. So all of a sudden happened in that moment, I said, and my wife and I were driving back from Dallas to Austin, I said, hey, listen, how can we act like we've never met him? I said, because he changed me. He changed who I am and how significant this issue is. This kid grew up in a rich community and he got burned. So even the worst, this is what blew me away. Some of the most Christian and some of the wealthiest communities are the worst abusers. That's what I didn't understand because I thought it was going to be a poor issue. I thought it was inner city, and it wasn't anything like that. But then I started to go back into business and say, look, if my idea of how do we love this child today, if he's my customer, how do we set love? I don't want him to ever experience any pain. I just want him to have an amazing life. Well, I can't walk into any business after that and start looking at any business problem and say, well, hold it. What's the critical need? And right. How do we make this so that we can love this business today? Wow. Are we adding value in what we're saying we do? And wow. Sometimes, and then that's where instant change came from. I want to instantly change somebody's life today by the fact that we have hope, but we can also bring the smartest people to the table. Just ask what's the next thing we need to do today.
Peter, you're another living example of something I've often say with the 30 years of doing Christian radio and television. Whatever God saves you from or brings you through, he turns you around and makes you a minister too. And you're clearly an example of that, you and your wife, Kelly, so I commend you. Is it possible today for businesses to embrace love in their operation instead of bottom line?
No, I believe it does. And we actually just launched a program called Be Human, the Be Human Project, and we launched it in St. Louis about 2 weeks ago. And we had 60 CEOs in the room, and only one came up to me afterwards and said, this whole love thing is kind of weird, And truthfully, when I sat back and looked at his life, I'm sorry, my screen went out here. I apologize.
You're okay.
But,
You're okay.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know. Yeah. So when I saw his life, I could see where there was, again, everything was a transaction, even in regards to his own kids. In regards to they were more of a problem. There wasn't much love in the way he treated his family, and I've always been fascinated when you look at crisis. And this really hit me in 2010. I finished the year and I had 1,400 meetings plus, and so every day I was meeting people that somebody asked me to meet. And these are all significant people asking me to meet somebody significant. And I started to realize that most people don't know who they really are. And when people start telling me about what their dreams are or what their business was created to do, they start to sound very similar. I didn't see anything really unique. And so when I started to look at a person that was in crisis, I couldn't change the fact that a business had the same, as an entity, had the same issues. Huh. And I actually created a thing called the home plate. And I wish I could send this to you so you could see it, but it's pretty easy to even describe. I said, because vision statements and mission statements don't really mean anything. And when you're in a crisis, nobody believes in any of them. Even the people on the team, even the executives don't really care. So what I realized is that a home plate is really just a big square. And if I just put it into 4 corners, the first corner, it's like a clock. The first 15 minutes of anything is where you're most passionate.
I actually have a picture of it here. So go ahead.
Yeah. So you can see that top right-hand corner is where passion and love exist.
Right.
So why would you create something if you're not passionate about it, or do you love it?
Yeah.
And what happens is that most people can't describe why this business was created. And you can see the people that came in later, the people don't really are tied to the founders. People are kind of answering their own kind of reason why they think it needs to exist. But it wasn't the way that it existed in the beginning. And I honestly believe that that's God. God creates something, puts that epiphany in somebody's mind that said, this needs to exist. So the next thing is, once it's there and you believe this is needed, what makes you unique versus everybody else that claims to do the same thing or want to do the same thing or is passionate about the same thing as you are? Well, that's your life story. It's who you are. It's always the journey that you went on makes you unique. And truthfully, if you talk to people about what that uniqueness is, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. Right? So everything on the right-hand side of the home plate is who you are, but everything on the left is what you're going to do to make a difference. And that's why I say, now, based on your passion, based on what makes you unique, how do you make an impact? And how does that impact based in truth? And have you ever made an impact?
You're saying something here that's so powerful, because you and I probably have seen not only companies that were born out of a passion of an individual go to the next generation and fail. We've seen ministries go to the next generation and fail. Something fell through the cracks when it was passing the baton.
Well, it's interesting. If I use this in a church environment, and I've done this when I've met with leaders of churches, and I ask them what their passion is, and they say God. It's Jesus Christ. And I go, okay, but can I ask you the question? I said, you're a church. Isn't that kind of a duh?
Yeah.
Because God's in everything. So what's your passion? Well, our passion really is about kids, or it's about the community, or it's about elders. All of a sudden, you start to understand as a business where they're different.
Right.
You're saying, because again, God's into everything. And so then what makes you unique in relationship to that passion of children? Oh, it starts to really become clear in regards to what they're doing and why they're created.
Peter, I know this is not a fair question, so forgive me, but to give you only a few minutes to answer this question, you are fascinating with how your journey from being given up for adoption to where you are today on the other side of 2 heart attacks. What would you say would be your life statement to those listening? What have you learned? If you could summarize it all up, what do you want people to know, not only about you as a person, but what you've learned, what you want them to know about life?
Well, one is that relationships are critical, and they're not transactional. These are true relationships where these are people that really care about you. And what I believe is that you can't be the smartest person. You can't be the expert. We have to be honest with our friends, which means sometimes we have to have a third party to validate what we're about to say, because we don't want to hurt anybody. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is that most people don't have real relationships. And I can tell you, even if just using a home plate, you can validate the relationships in your life. Do people, are they passionate about the same thing you are? Mm-hmm. And I'm always fascinated when I ask somebody. There was a story a few years ago. I was speaking in university, and they asked me to look at a social psychology program that was going on down the road. And when I sat in, and they had kids age 5 to 11 years old, and all they asked these kids to do is draw a picture of 25 cents, just a quarter. And when they were done, some of the kids drew it the size of an orange, and some kids drew it the size of a dime. So then they were wondering, why is it so different? And they realized when they looked at the kids' backgrounds, the kids that were rich, it was nothing. That's why they drew it the size of a dime. The kids that were poor, it was big, it was huge. They didn't have 25 cents. So it's very significant. So perception is the first thing. If the kids don't even have a perception of 25 cents is 25 cents, when you ask somebody, who am I? How do you describe me? And in that moment, if your friends can't describe you in a way that makes sense, they don't know you.
Wow.
That's why the home plate was so critical, because I wanted people to say, if you can't literally check each corner of the home plate in somebody that you love in your life, then they don't know you. And that means you have to change perception of who they are and who you are to them.
Peter, you're an inspiration, and I'd like to continue a series with you, quite frankly, because I think you could mentor thousands of people through media, but I've gained much from our time together today, and what an inspiration. Thank you so much, and let's get together soon, okay?
Perry, I'll be honest, I can't thank you enough for your time.
Well, fascinating gentleman, the most connected man in America, the most connected man in the world, Peter Strople. Well, coming up, Colonel Dave Dotterrer is back with us. We're going to talk about the special session that just ended, and he's literally alive. He survived it. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and our guest back in the studio with us today is Dave Dotterrer, and he just returned from being up in Salem over the special session, and he has you have an interesting task up there because you were selected by the House and the Senate to be the kind of the budget liaison person between those two chambers. The whole purpose of the session was to be budget tweaking.
Right.
And what happened?
Well, let me make one small change to that.
Okay.
It was just the Republican caucus.
The Republican, right.
Republican caucuses, so that's the minority.
Right.
So basically what happened was the people of Oregon were sold this idea of this special session, 1 month session, because we needed to tweak the budget and make some minor changes in policy.
Right.
That's not what you got. You had a 33-day session that on the evening of day 32, an hour and 11 minutes before the committee meeting, the budget came out for people to take a look at it. It just was hidden behind, and the Republicans didn't know what was really in it. Now, they knew little bits and pieces of it. You know, there were, on an ad hoc kind of individual basis, people knew that there was some money being moved around, but they didn't really know what was going on. And then on top of that, there was brought forward several controversial bills, like gun control, changing the name of a ballot initiative, trying to ram through an Oregon-only Columbia River crossing, those kinds of things. Those are major changes, and that's not what the session was designed for. So, so again,
so the budget came out a day before the end of the session, basically.
Well, yeah, they ended the session on Friday at 5 p.m. And if you look at the date timestamp, and I brought this in for everybody to take a look at, this is 65 pages of the budget. This came out 1 hour and 11 minutes Thursday evening at 4:49. Okay, so you're a representative, and you're on one of these committees, and you've got exactly an hour and 11 minutes to look at page after page after page of this. Plus, this budget doesn't tell you what the big movements are. It doesn't tell you how much more money we're spending. It just tells you in this agency we added $29,332. Well, It doesn't do you any good. I mean, you know what? That's not what you vote on. You vote on a budget. You don't have it. So that's what. So from the budget standpoint, it was a complete failure, non-transparent. It was not bipartisan.
All right. It's balanced.
Well, it was not a balance in the first place.
Okay.
All they did was move money around.
Move money around.
Absolutely.
And some agencies got more, some got less.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, of course, that's what you do.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no. But again, if you're one of the legislators, you don't know what you have the detailed line, but you don't have the big picture. Well, how much money did we really? More money did we really spend? As best I can figure, we spent about another $100+ million, and we drained the reserve funds. We didn't have more money. We just lowered the amount of reserve funds to well less than 1% of the budget, and we've got 2/3 of the budget left to execute. And we've got 1%. I mean, all it's going to take is a little minor blip in our economy, and we're going to find ourselves in deficit spending, which we can't do, of course.
Part of the problem was it ended up it acted like a full-blown session. A lot of bills were introduced, a lot of things were happening. There was a couple that kind of surfaced. One that came through that was kind of interesting one was whether or not cities could opt out on this marijuana dispensary. And at first when I saw what happened, I kind of go, huh? They approved it for a year?
Right. Here's what happened. It started over in the Senate, and it was a bipartisan bill that was submitted by a Republican senator and a Democratic senator. Then it went off to the Democratic chair of that particular committee, and he, of course, manipulated it into something that it wasn't. And so they passed it out of the Senate with no opt-out. And he also took out the portion that talked about marketing marijuana to kids.
Yeah,
he took that out too. So then it went over to the House, and the bipartisan committee on the House side, which is controlled by the Democrats, unanimously put all those things back in again and voted it out to the floor of the House, where it then went into battle again, and that's where they backed off and said, well, we're not going to give you a full opt-out, we're only going to give you the 1 year. See, that was the compromise. And you're looking at that and you're thinking, well, this is crazy. This is stupid. Now, the good news was that they did keep in the portion about marketing marijuana to kids. You know, the pot tarts instead of Pop Tarts, the pot tarts part of it stayed in. That was good.
What's the age? 18 on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I find it interesting. I had Senator Alan Bates, and you're running against him, and he made a comment. He said, well, we know that marijuana is a mind-altering drug for the youth. Well, I thought, well, it doesn't alter your mind at 19?
That's right. Somehow you magically turn 18.
And I don't mean that to be disrespectful to him, but I mean, why are we even going down this road? Marijuana is a mind-altering drug, period.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
And we ought to make this permanent, that a local community should be able to make the decision about what they're going to do about this. And what you're seeing is a slow burn toward pushing toward legalization. Everybody, you can see this coming a mile away.
Do you think it'll be approved, though? I mean, we're looking at California, or excuse me, Colorado and Washington. We're going, I don't know if we want this.
Well, I don't know whether it would be or not. I mean, in my mind, it shouldn't even be a question. Of course, we shouldn't legalize it, but no, that's not the way the politics of this are playing out. And you can just see that this is boiling the water and the frog a little bit at a time. That's what's happening to us here.
Any other frustrations?
The other frustration was wrapped around Cover Oregon.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's
no outrage.
There's no outrage, and there's no accountability. I mean, this is a massive failure in leadership. What happened with Cover Oregon. Not only from an oversight standpoint for the legislature, all the indicators were there. You hired a quality assurance company, paid them over $1 million. They put out reports. They told you that a year before, in 19 areas, 11 was red. Your check engine light came on. You should have seen this coming. And then for people to act like, well, we didn't know, and the contractor did this, and people lied to us. Sorry, that's what you're seeing is another failure of leadership, which is leaders hold themselves accountable. and now we're seeing this duck and cover. Oregon, I guess we've talked about that a little bit, and so again, you're just seeing this.
It's an amazing thing. We know that the feds now, through Congressman Walden and candidate Dennis Richardson, are looking into this for the amount of money the feds put in and how it was managed. We put our own money into this; it's managed. Can we recall, ask for a refund from Oracle? This thing is a catastrophic, huge financial failure, and nobody's outraged about it. Where could that money have gone elsewhere and been used better?
Well, you got to look at what in this particular budget, the state police came in and said we need some more money for more troopers on the highways. Oh, we just can't find the money for you.
Yeah,
and it's only a few $1,000,000, and we just wasted, $150, $160 million on Cover Oregon, and there's no outrage on that. So you've got these pieces, and I think the other thing, Perry, that's really important is you passed a law that forced people into a particular form of health insurance and a health program, and then the key piece that makes that work, you didn't make sure it worked. You pulled people out of the private insurance, forced them into Cover Oregon, and then you didn't make sure the Cover Oregon worked. So now what you've done is you've shafted these people, because now they're left out in the cold.
Well,
and so it's a twofer. Not only was it financially incompetent, you made promises that you didn't keep.
And you have 2 weeks before they're illegal, according to Obamacare. And they're not going to make it by April 1st.
No, they're not.
Well, we can go on all day about this.
We go on.
It's fascinating.
That was that. But again,
there's the budget. You were given those pages an hour and 11 minutes to decide. Well, you were the sitting legislators were giving an hour and a half to decide whether or not they were going to pass this thing.
Yeah.
After 5 weeks of
after
being
5 weeks of it sitting
amazing.
back here. It's a bad way of doing business.
It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Well, listen, people want to get a hold of you for your campaign. What do they do?
DaveDotterrer.com.
DaveDotterrer.com. All right. Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Welcome back, and I tell you, one of the great ministries in the world is Wycliffe Bible Translators, and I have with us today a very special friend, and that's David Moore. He's the Assistant Regional Team Leader for Wycliffe team there in Indonesia. We're going to talk to him about that and Bible translations in that part of the world. David, nice to have you with us. You're home for a little while, huh?
Yeah, it's good to be back here in the U.S. for 6.5 months.
6.5 months?
Yeah.
Wow. How long have you been in Indonesia?
First got there about 10 years ago, and been kind of in and out.
Wow. So how did you get involved in Bible translating?
Well, I think I first heard about even just the need for it when I was in 2nd grade. I remember some missionaries sharing at church, and they were talking about the work of Bible translation, and I just really thought that was pretty amazing and foundational, just the fact that there's so many people that don't have God's Word in a language that they can understand, and felt like that was something really important. And it wasn't until I was in college that I began to actually think, well, maybe that's something that I could do.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you trained in that? I mean, how do they train you and get you ready to do this?
Well, initially when I was in college, I started in the biblical languages major, and I thought I was going to be a translator. And as I started studying that, I said, you know what, I've got a passion for this. I really feel like God has given me a passion for this, but I don't feel like that's my gifting. So I began to look at what I could do to help support the work of Bible translation, and ended up in an administrative sort of service role, helping the other teams that are doing that. And so I got a little bit of training in linguistics, but more training in administration and trying to help the teams.
Why Indonesia? How'd you end up there? Of all the places, I mean, you're all over the world, Wycliffe,
yeah.
But how did you end up in Indonesia?
Well, ended up in Indonesia. Really, it was a friend that told me about the needs and opportunities there. Went for in 1999 for about a half a year, and was helping out with some of the language survey work, trying to help determine where translation work was needed, and fell in love. And also, I think a lot of it too was just realizing the huge amount of need in Indonesia. Indonesia has over 700 languages, about 1/10 of the world's languages, about 7,000 languages in the world. Indonesia's got about 700. And of those, Indonesia has more languages without any of the Bible than any other country. And just the sheer need, and just fell in love with it. And so really felt like God was leading me there, and so it's been exciting to be there.
So where are you in Indonesia?
Currently, my wife and I and our 3 kids, we're living in the city of Ambon, which is on the island of Ambon, which is the capital of the province of Maluku over in eastern Indonesia.
Well, how's it going? I mean, are you seeing stories and getting results from translating the Bible? And what language are you doing it in?
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes people, they think of Indonesia, they think, well, Indonesian. They, think, they hear China, they think Chinese. But there's a lot of languages out there, and the Bible has already been translated into Indonesian numerous times. But of the people in Indonesia, there's a lot of people that don't understand Indonesian, and even of those who maybe have a certain level of understanding, it's not their heart language. And so trying to help get it into the languages that speak best to the people's heart. In the province of Maluku, where we work, there's 90 different languages spread across 1,000 islands. And so we're currently working in about 25 different languages in the province of Maluku, working together with local churches and a couple of other local organizations, working together with them, really empowering and enabling them. They've got a vision for the work of Bible translation. They've asked for help, and so we're working with them. That's wonderful. So how strong is the Christian movement in that part of Indonesia? You got a lot of churches, Christian churches? There are, but it's interesting. In Indonesia, there's 6 government-approved religions, and everyone has to be one of those 6, and it's on your national identity card. And so there's a lot of people that have chosen Christianity or chosen Islam or Hinduism or Buddhism, but it's not really what they believe. And so even among the Christians in the province of Maluku, it's about 50% Christian, 50% Muslim. But of those Christians, a lot of them just have that on their identity card. And the church really has a desire to help those Christians to really know and understand God's Word. And for a lot of them, if it's just the only access that they have is Indonesian, they're never going to really understand it and really going to penetrate their heart and change their lives. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing people who finally get a Bible in their language are able to read it and assimilate it and see the change? Oh, we are, and it's exciting. I got the chance in 2012. My wife and I and our kids had the chance, the first time I've ever been to a New Testament dedication. Literally, they call it a launching, and it was so exciting to be there for that launching of the New Testament in that language there. And is it like an event, a celebration? Yeah, it was a couple-day event celebration, and they had, in that language community, there's 27 different churches, and so there was representatives from each of those churches. The language community is about 17,000 people. Wow. So it's not a huge language, but it's quite a few people. And so all the representatives from each of those congregations were there, and there was just a real celebration of celebrating that they finally have, after about 25 years in the process, finally have the New Testament in their language. We've gone on and working with them to help them do the Old Testament. They just finished the book of Genesis, getting ready to print that right now. So how do you do this? How do you do this work? Do you sit down with somebody from that language and that's bilingual? How do you do this? That's a good question. Yeah, it's a process, and we work with them, and really they're the ones translating it. If someone has a foreigner tries to go in and learn the language and do it, it's going to always sound foreign. We want it to sound clear, accurate, and natural. That's kind of the goal, is we want, if it's not clear and it's not accurate and it's not natural, any one of those 3, then it's not going to really impact their lives, penetrate their heart. And so working with them using a combination of both the original Greek and Hebrew texts, the Indonesian, several different translations, and working with them, helping them to understand what does the Bible say, and then helping them to put it into their language, And then also doing a lot of testing, community testing, testing with consultants, back translations back into the either Indonesian, or then the translator does a back translation oftentimes into English and then can work with a consultant. And so really making sure that it's going to be accurate. You don't want the Bible to not be accurate.
Yeah, right. Is there literacy issues? I mean, can people read?
Some can.
Okay.
Some can't. A lot of the languages there isn't much, if any, written materials, and so literacy is an issue. And so we do work
do they
together
teach
with
reading at all, or is it just a language thing?
They do in the national language,
Yeah.
but very rarely is reading taught in the local language, although that is beginning to change. There are preschools that the government has been encouraging using the local language, helping kids to start their education, and including reading, using the local languages. But we've also found the real need for an oral approach. So also doing recording of Scripture, but also doing oral Bible storying. If you just read a written text, it sounds like you're reading something written. So developing stories in a story format, Bible stories, that tell the story, maybe not the whole of Scripture, but some of the key stories that are really going to intersect with their worldview and the needs that they have.
So you're allowed to do the oral story telling as well?
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, I've been to Jakarta.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating country, fascinating city. But I can't imagine living in Indonesia. But how has it been an adjustment for you?
It has. When the first time I visited Indonesia, I was single, and then when I came back, I was married, and my wife was pregnant, and then we had our first two kids were born there in Jakarta.
Really?
And yeah, it's an adjustment. There's a lot of things that are different, but I think that it's
a lot of things that are very modern in Jakarta as well.
In Jakarta, very much so. Yeah, Jakarta's a huge city, but in Ambon, it's very much small town, and it's fun. We enjoy the beautiful scenery, the nature there. We enjoy going snorkeling and just enjoying God's beautiful creation.
Is there a hunger for God's Word in Indonesia?
Yes. And I maybe I pause and I say it like that because not everyone, here in the U.S. too, that not everyone has a hunger for God's Word. There's people that do. I would say there's a growing hunger for it, and there's a growing realization and need among both churches and individuals that just having the Bible in Indonesian is not enough. And that's good, and that's going to help a lot of people. But there's a lot of people that's never going to really penetrate their heart and change their lives.
Are you on a timeline, David, to get so many other languages done in a certain period of time?
Well, Wycliffe has a vision statement, Vision 2025, desire to see Bible translation work begun in every language that needs it by the year 2025. That's the goal.
Right.
I don't know whether that'll happen or not, but it has caused us to really look at things differently and say, not just how can we just keep doing what we've been doing and working with a lot of other partners and doing things, but how can we try to accelerate that so that more people can have access to God's Word quicker?
Is there technology that helps you? I mean, are you able to use computers at all in some of this?
Oh, technology is critical. And we use computers, and it's been very helpful, and that's really helped to speed up the work. There's a lot of specific computer software that's been developed that helps the work, and we work together with the United Bible Societies in a program called Paratext, and so it's been really exciting to see how that has been able to really help the work.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Thanks for coming in. And people that want to support you and what you're doing, what do they do? Do you have a website or something?
Yeah, if you go to wycliffe.org, that's the main Wycliffe US website. Wycliffe.net is the Wycliffe International website, wycliffe.org or .net.
Okay, and take a look at they're all over the world. They're doing a fascinating work in getting God's Word translated into many, many languages. Been at it for a long time and doing a great, well, thanks. Fascinating story. Thanks for visiting. Thanks for coming in. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.